Welcome to the Battlefield Show. I'm your host, Sage Goodwin, and as always, I'm joined by Sammy Boy. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Doing pretty good on this glorious day today. And today, we're going to be talking about the Tom Henderson leak from last week, detailing DICE's learning valuable lessons from Battlefield 2042, as well as some of the teases around the future for 2042 and the Battlefield series as a whole. So let's jump right in. This podcast is a production of Uplink Media Group. Uplink is a podcast network dedicated to highlighting the love and experience of gaming and pop culture. Check out our other show, Star Wars Uplink and The Forge, the Halo Infinite podcast, as well as our YouTube channels for even deeper dives into Battlefield, Star Wars, and more. YouTube.com/Uplink podcast and StarWarsUplink.com. So we were talking about this right before we started recording, but so we weren't able to do a podcast last week because internet in Australia went upside down. I described it on Facebook, or not Facebook, the YouTube community post. It's like Sammy's internet went upside down because Australia. So we weren't able to cover this news last week, but it is quite interesting, this discussion. We were talking about it beforehand. Like when I first went over this, I was kind of heated, but been able to kind of cool down for a week. So it's almost a good thing we didn't record last week, so we can have more of a kind of genuine, thoughtful discussion on this. And this is the headline here. Battlefield series begins uphill battle, featuring reversions coming to next title as valuable lessons, and that's in quotation marks, learned from Battlefield 2042. And it says there's a strong team at DICE continuing to work on DLC for Battlefield 2042, while lessons have been learned and changes will be made to the future of the series. Dude, they messed up. all of the leaks recently are very clear how much they messed up.
Yeah. To be honest, it's actually kind of, in a weird way, nice to hear that they've, internally anyway, and if this, we don't know if any of this is true, but if this is true, it's nice to know that they've kind of internally admitted that. They kind of, publicly did a little bit when they said the whole, delay in that they're going to try and fix it, and they know that they messed up and stuff, but it is good to know that they're, in a weird way, it's good to know they're hurting and they're going, we kind of messed up here. Because, it sometimes seems like, even in the investors call last time, Andrew Wilson pretty much said, it's only 10% of our income, so, who cares, almost.
It sucked, but don't worry about that.
Yeah, so it almost felt like that was kind of annoying, because it was a bit you should care about it a bit more than that. There's millions of players that are annoyed. But yeah, it is kind of good to hear that, we kind of want the company to hurt a little bit in terms of, earning less and stuff like that. As long as all the employees and stuff are paid. If people are losing jobs and stuff, that's obviously not good. But if they can keep everyone in jobs while still taking a bit of a hit, I think that's a good thing, because they need a bit of a wake-up call, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's funny that internally they refer to the game as, quote, a miss.
That's a very gentle way of putting it.
It is. That sounds like a manager that's like, okay, guys, I understand that I made this decision, but I can see now that it was a miss. I know it was my decision to be made, but I'm humble enough to really admit that I was wrong. But we all paid for it. And it goes on to say, despite the poor numbers that Battlefield 2042 has generated in terms of continuing play, because I think it was Westy or someone. No, it was some journalist or YouTuber or whatever hopping on the Battlefield 2042 bandwagon of being like with this hot take, like I struggle to relate to the spirit of the tweet, but the truth is that like even to this day, like Steam, in terms of Steam sales, Battlefield 2042 is still like pretty up there in terms of how many sales it had, but that sales. And that person was saying, well, all these people whining about Battlefield 2042, it still sold really well. But like that's taking the approach of like, yeah, sales are the only thing that matters. Who cares about the fan base? Blah blah blah. Like,
yeah, Cyberpunk sold pretty well as well, didn't it?
Exactly, incredibly well. Set records for CD Projekt Red, but it still was not the greatest experience for players. But they do have a point. It sold quite well and continues to sell quite well. It's just the people will buy it and they won't go through the process or can't even get a return if they want one. If they find out that there aren't any players. And I was looking through, spawned by a tweet today, the YouTube search numbers for Battlefield 2042 is 0.
Yeah, I saw that. 0%. That's
it's like, what?
That's massive pain.
Yeah, big oof is what I described it as.
Yeah.
But like, what does this mean for Battlefield 2042? What does this mean for the future of the Battlefield series? Especially like, as they mention it in this article, Tom Henderson said this was originally planned, and they said as much, that this was going to be the future foundation for the Battlefield franchise, and this was going to be their entry into the bigger multiplayer side of things. And then in this article, they said that a former developer who recently left DICE following the launch of Battlefield 2042 suggested that the next game was almost going to be, quote, like a hero shooter with specialists becoming mercenaries. So that was like the long-term plan was this game is going to be great. It's going to implement all of these changes, and because of those changes, we can hop on the bandwagon of a hero shooter.
Yeah,
even more so.
I very much hope that they don't do that.
So, like,
I get
question
their
for
like
you.
point of wanting. Yeah, you go.
Question for you. Like this, we are all like initially saying no, we don't want a hero shooter. Why don't we want a hero shooter? As someone that is like, I know my reasons, but like you are even deeper into the Battlefield franchise. You have a lot more of that experience in the game franchise as a whole. Why don't we want Battlefield 2042 or Battlefield as a franchise to go that direction?
It's tough because weirdly enough, I do actually quite enjoy the hero shooter type of formula. But I think for me, it's just because it's not Battlefield. It's not what the game has been built on. And if they can do it properly, which after this, I just don't think they can. Like, Specialist was kind of like a mix between classes and, it's not a full-blown hero shooter right now, because they don't have like drastic abilities and stuff like that. It is still somewhat class-based. So this kind of is the middle ground, and I don't think they can really ease us into a hero shooter. This has obviously not worked, so they can't take it further. They can't go a full-blown hero shooter. So if they could make it work, I think it would be awesome, but I just don't know how they can make it work with the DNA of Battlefield. Like a cool way to do it would be, they're talking about this Battlefield universe and they've got more dev teams. They're building the Seattle team and stuff like that. If they could kind of do what Call of Duty's doing, where they almost have sub-franchises, so they've got Modern Warfare and Black Ops and stuff. If they could have the main Battlefield like releases, but then, they make like a mini, almost like a Rainbow Six type of game where it's a bit smaller. It's not 128 players. It's just like a maybe 12v12, for example. If they could split it off into its own thing, I think it could work. Almost in the way that like Hardline is a bit of a spin-off. If they could do that alongside having proper, getting the main games to the Battlefield 4 in 1 days, then I think it could work really well, because then you've got two separate games, and you can even sort of like intertwine different bits of content. I think something like that could work, but I just also don't think if they can't handle one game, I don't think they can handle two games. So
Yeah.
I just don't think it's going to work. And I think like they would have been dumb to not try it. So like fair enough. That is the way that the shooter genre is going, and I think they kind of just had to try it. But it just hasn't worked. So I really hope that they don't go that path and they just take us back to the core Battlefield experience, really.
For me, the reason that this will never work for Battlefield is the same reason why Battlefield 2042 didn't work. Is they were trying to force two things that did not go well together, or they tried to basically merge two existing things into one without changing one of the two in a way that made sense for both of them. We got a very unnatural pairing, and I think unless they drastically change how DICE works, they'll never make a true merging of popular ideals and a Battlefield game together with DICE. Maybe Marcus Leto's development company can, but I don't think they will, and I definitely don't think that they should do something along those lines with basically saying, oh yeah, Battlefield 2042 is the big multiplayer game, and then we're going to make another one that's just hero shooter. I don't think that's going to work very well. Yeah,
I agree. Battlefield's DNA just doesn't. That's kind of the thing that it's like. That's why it's been good, because they do their own thing. Look back at the pretty much from Bad Company 2 through to Battlefield 1, they were just sticking to their DNA while making changes that were really good. And they were pushing the boundaries. Like, even though Call of Duty was the one it was making more sales and stuff, Call of Duty was trying to kind of keep up with Battlefield, because Battlefield was just setting the pace, and it's kind of flipped. Battlefield seems to be now trying to chase Apex and Call of Duty and all those games, and it's just, I don't know. I think they're at their best when they're the ones being creative. So I just don't think it's a good idea. It doesn't hurt to take inspiration from other games and use them and expand on them. But like you just said, they kind of took stuff from other games that didn't expand on them. They just put them in. And that's not how it's done. When you look at, most of the battle royales, every new one that comes out, it pretty much takes everything that the last one does and improves upon it. Whereas, they just didn't do anything like that. With the specialist system is essentially just the same as, like, in fact, it's worse than the legends in Apex, for example, because they're less niche, I guess. They're all kind of similar. It's just they have one ability. So they just didn't do enough different. And, like you said, I'm just not sure they can really do that, especially, like I said, maybe they could do it in a separate game, but I just don't think that's the way to go. I think they need to, at least not for like a decade, they need to just get like 2 to 3 really good Battlefield games out there to get back to where it was. And then, at that point, then, like try again. I'm not opposed to that, but right now we just need a good Battlefield game, and they can't take risks like that.
Exactly. I think that's a good way to put it. They need to go back to their roots. They need to find out what made Battlefield great in the first place, and what they truly need is a love letter to the fans, something that everyone involved can be proud of and can truly enjoy. He also mentions in this post that several people invited to these sessions believe that the changes coming to the specialist system in 2042 will tie specialist roles to classes more closely. What do you think about that?
They did mention on, I think it was the EA forums, I can't remember who, it might have been Stratford, who said that the next community feedback sort of thing that they're doing after they've still got to do the second one for the maps, but after that they've said they're going to be talking about specialists. So I do think that's the way they'll go. I don't think they're going to I think they've kind of just admitted defeat, and then they're not going to try and be like, nah, we're sticking with it. I think they will tone it down a bit. It might still be not exactly what we want, but it might be the middle ground where, you know, what we were saying from the start, pretty much, like have them still specialists but falling under each class. For now, that's really the best way they can go. They could just go back to regular classes, but obviously that just kind of deletes everything they've done, and that's, as much as we would all want it, that's not realistic. Like, they're just not going to do that.
The game's so tied to it as well.
Yeah.
I think what they're going to do is what we suggested on the podcast, like, before.
I think it was in the beta,
like,
wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was in
the beta. I think it was before that. Yeah.
And then we were literally like, because I think both of us were kind of like, I was keen on the idea. It sounded good on paper. And then I remember the first podcast after the beta, I was like, nah, I'll take that back, man.
Yeah, I think it was the beta because they were so broken in the beta, and they were like, oh, maybe when they all get into the game, it's going to be much better. No,
nope.
Didn't get better. And I think that's a good indicator. That's a good just kind of summary of Battlefield 2042 is like, maybe it'll be better. Nope. It won't be. Nope, stop that. I think one of the most interesting things in this post, they're talking about kind of the current state of the game, how it's being described as a miss, how a lot of the people are aware that, hey, when we put out garbage, people aren't just going to pick it up and blindly accept it. I think another thing is interesting too is they're going back to the office, and I've seen a lot more developers that haven't said anything for a long period start saying things again, and that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how things change when they're back at the office, because I think it will hopefully lead to like a bit of a faster, like instead of monthly updates, maybe we do get fortnightly. They might not be as big, but obviously we might get more fixes per month now, because I think a lot of people, when the pandemic hit, a lot of people were like, oh, it won't matter. They can still do it from home. It clearly doesn't work. It's not just this game. It's every game that I've been involved in. Like, look at Battlefront 2. They were going along pretty well, and then COVID hit and they had to work from home, and the game pretty much got cancelled. Warzone's been way slower than it. Probably the first few months were really fast because they probably hadn't been. I think it launched in Feb or March of 2020, so they probably got in a couple of months worth of working from the office, and then they had to go back. And I think it will make a pretty big difference. I don't think it's going to be the savior of the game or anything, but it definitely will, make an improvement in the way that they're working, and hopefully it just all of them being together, hopefully it gives them a bit more of a, I guess, like singular vision where they're all in the office together working. They all know what they're doing because they can just go to the other cubicle and talk to the next person rather than having to get on a call with them. So I hope it just kind of connects them a little bit more, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I don't think it's going to be drastic, but it'll definitely improve.
Yeah, I think there's the level of communication is going to be a lot better in the office for most people.
Yeah.
That, as well as the pipeline for deploying updates and patches to their own servers on their own network.
Yeah, that's actually something I didn't think of. Yeah, it's all going to be centralized. There's no more waiting on this person to get this uploaded so then you can do your part. It's
Jeff's slowing everything down because he moved back to Kansas and they only have 10 megabits per second internet.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to watch. I don't think it will really kick in for a couple of months. Like, it might not really kick in until mid-season 1 because they've still got to kind of get the ball rolling, but it's definitely a good sign anyway.
Yeah. Another thing that's there's two pairings here that I want to tie together is he says his sources did confirm that the next title is currently slated to have a near future / modern setting. And then another thing that I find very interesting at the end that he mentioned is the discussion around Russia. Because the whole big bad around this game is Russia. And with the current state of the world right now, that's not good.
Nah.
And the storyline is so heavily tied to Russia that they basically have to wipe the slate just clean, really. So their idea of having these iconic characters isn't probably going to make a whole lot of difference in this game because they're just going to have to wipe it clean and do something different next game.
Yeah, 100%. I never really thought of that too much because, every game in the past has had America versus Russia pretty much, but now that it's obviously things have escalated in real life.
Well, hitting a little too close to home.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how they deal with that. Hopefully, like, fingers crossed, obviously the more important thing is that Russia just stops what they're doing and then it'll obviously just...
We can make fun of them some more.
Yeah, it'll settle down Ukraine, which is the more important thing, but then obviously we can just not have to delete all of the lore in the game as well. So,
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how they handle that, but yeah, I never really thought about that until this article.
Yeah, same here. It's like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If I was in that leadership position, I would be making sure that is as far away from that touching true to life topics for the next 20 years. Like there's a level of separation that you need to really be able to do something along those lines, because otherwise it hits way too close to home and it just... You start getting faced with that realism, and a lot of people use video games to have a little bit of that escapism. So yeah. I think it's a benefit to step away from that as much as they can.
Yeah.
He also mentions one, as we've talked about previously in the podcast, DICE is obligated legally to release 4 specialists and 4 battle passes for Battlefield 2042, and we already know of at least one map. And I know they never specified the number of maps that the game was going to release. I know they wanted to have multiple maps throughout the season, but maybe we only get one because of the time frame that they've been putting in, investing in, adjusting the previous locations, as well as that. And then Ripple Effect is also working to bring new content to Battlefield Portal as well. So I think that could be interesting too.
Yeah, I really hope part of that is not just content, like not just new maps and stuff, but they introduce some sort of persistent servers, because that's the thing we've had whole podcasts on that topic. But
yeah,
it's all well and good for them to add, a bunch more Battlefield 3 maps and all whatever they want to do, but if we can't consistently find those lobbies and they're not persistent, I just still don't know if Portal is so awesome, but it's just not quite there. And I think they really need to focus more on getting it to where it needs to be, as in persistent servers and the full XP gain and all that kind of thing that it seemed like it was going to have at the start, before they focus on adding more content. Because there is quite a bit of... There's essentially as much content in terms of maps as the base game, and then there's like 50, 60 weapons. So I don't think content is really the issue with Portal. And don't get me wrong, I'd gladly take more, but I think they really need to try and make that a bit more viable, I guess, because it's it's still not where it needs to be, unfortunately.
Yeah, they need to. I mean, there's so much content that's locked behind Portal that it'd be so great of a benefit to just put that in the main game as just like a super easy win.
Yeah.
Will they ever do it? Who knows? I think it'd be great if they did, but I don't know if they're in the position to really be able to do that right now. Ripple Effect needs to really focus on what Portal needs to do. I think ultimately making it free to play would make a lot of sense. It's a very easy direction for them to go that way. Easy in terms of like an easy win. It definitely would attract people, especially if they have plans to bring more content to the game. They could easily tie cosmetics and stuff to the weapons. Like it could be an easy win for them to really bring that forward. But I don't know. We've had this discussion in the previous episodes too, like what makes sense for them, what makes sense for the game, and then what makes sense in terms of like what are easy wins that they can start implementing things that bring people back, and what are those big resets that they need to have to attract people that have left the game and written it off until the next one.
Yeah, I think it's such a fine line between getting people back so that there's a bit of hype, and then they can start working on that, but then they also need to get it to a state where the people who are coming back will stay as well. So it's kind of like they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, really. They need to fix
Yeah.
it. It's hard. It'd be hard to be motivated working on this game because there's just like 8 people playing it at the moment. But it's like, yeah, you have to get it to a spot where, if you look at what happened with Battlefront, the 19 million new players in a week when they released it free. If that happens with this game, and then it's just in the state that it's in, 18.5 million of those will just not play it again. So you've got to try and maximize how much like retention you can get in there. And I really just think they need to focus on getting the game right first, and then hopefully I don't even know if it'll be season 1 because that's really only a couple of months away now, and I just feel like it still needs another at least like 6 months till it's in a state where we're all like, okay, this is now like a pretty decent game. So yeah, I think the best way for them to do it really, which I just don't know if they would because that might be leaving it late on their end, but the best way for them to do it, in my opinion, would be get the game to as good of a state as they can by season 1, do season 1 and just like use that as a bit of a practice almost for seeing how it goes, if there's anything they need to tweak for season 2, and then season 2 fully relaunch the game in November or something. I think that's the best way to do it, and release a big portion of it for free, whether it's Portal or Hazard Zone or whatever, and get people in there once it's had that trial period, I guess, of season 1, because we just don't know what a season looks like in Battlefield. We've never had that before, so I think I think if they launch season 1,
that's a great point.
Yeah, if they launch season 1 as the kind of reboot, and there's a big new trailer, and they release something for free, we just don't know what a season is like yet, and it couldn't. It might just be not what we're expecting, and it might be a bit of a letdown. So if they kind of see that from the core player base, and if there's stuff that needs adjusting, then they can hopefully try and do that for season 2 and have that as a bit more of a stable relaunch, I guess. So be interesting to see. But then at the same time, like, they might kind of see that as leaving it too late because then they've only got 3 seasons left. I don't imagine they're going to support the game beyond season 4, to be honest. So yeah, they might just think that's too late and they want to get as many people in the door early. Just depends on how they want to go, but I don't think that's the best way to go, really.
Yeah, it's a very tough spot to be. Very, very difficult. To end this episode, I really want to have the discussion. There's been rumors floating around that they're expecting what they really want is to release this next Battlefield game in 2023 because that's when Call of Duty is taking a break. And I want to hear your thoughts. But first, I just want to say that is such a terrible move, and they need to stop this kind of thinking now.
It's so like they've just, if this article is true and they're learning from their mistakes, they obviously aren't learning from their mistakes because that's one of the biggest mistakes. Is they keep rushing them out. Their launches are so bad. Call of Duty is apparently going to possibly a 2-year cycle. We know 2023 is going to be a break. Whether they continue that break, we don't know. But I'd be aiming for 2025 and aim for that break if they're going to have another break.
Yeah.
Get this game sorted, support this for a long time. It's set up to make money. They will still make money on this game, even if it's a bit rough. Focus on the long term, man. They if they just rush out another one, the exact same thing will happen. And then the downside to Call of Duty having a break is if they launch in 2023 and it sucks, and all those Call of Duty players that they could potentially draw in are expecting, like, oh man, I'm kind of sick of Call of Duty.
Their first experience with Battlefield is horrible.
That's like, they will probably never touch it again. And a lot of people probably did that with this one. And if you do that for a second time, that is just suicide for Battlefield. So I couldn't be more against that.
Because, okay, January, I think, is when we heard the rumors that they pitched Battlefront 3 and were denied. So let's just say that was the time that they were pitching different ideas for the game. January of 2022. January of 2022, and they want to have a release in 2023. 2042 had, 3-year cycle, 5 developers, and it still had these problems?
Yeah. They're essentially trying to half that now. It would be pretty much a year and a half. That's just not, that will not work. That will absolutely not work unless it's going to be, like we said, a smaller, if it's Bad Company 3 and it's only 24 players a team or something, then, maybe, but even then I don't like that. They've competed with Call of Duty forever. They don't need to pounce on an opportunity to get in there when there's a break. I guarantee there'll be other big shooters coming out next year. It just doesn't matter. I think a lot of games focus too much on their competition. If you just release a good game, it just doesn't matter. Look at Elden Ring. That is going up against Horizon, which is a massive AAA PlayStation exclusive. It didn't care. It released the week after and it absolutely dominated Horizon. So I think any company that just sticks to their guns and says, "Nah, we've got a good game here. We're going to stick with it." They're the ones that are successful. The ones that focus on everyone else, I just think they get too caught up in the competition, and I don't know, I just don't think that works. You shouldn't have to focus on someone else to make a good project. You know what I mean? That just doesn't make sense to me.
And they have shown that they are too in their heads about it and making this decision of, they tried to do a lot of things that Call of Duty did without actually implementing it the way that Call of Duty did. I mean, Warzone, who would have thought, the first experience that that Call of Duty had with a battle royale was not the greatest because, one, they had that paywall. So there was that. It didn't really get supported all that much. What was it? I think it was Call of Duty. Is it Blackout?
Yeah,
is that what it's called?
Yep.
So they had a previous experience, and then they're like, "Yo, let's restart this. Let's actually look at what is Call of Duty, what is a battle royale. How can those things merge to make a beautiful baby?" And they did.
Yep. And do you know why they did that? Because they weren't worried about everyone else. That's the thing with Call of Duty. As much as I'm a Call of Duty fan, but I'll roast Call of Duty all the time because they just do the same thing every year. But they know what they do well and they stick to it. They don't care what everyone else does. They just do their own thing. And it results in them being the biggest selling game every single year for the last decade. So they obviously... They're
they don't even see
themselves.
Battlefield as competition, probably.
No. And to be fair, after this, they don't even... It's not even a worry for them.
They shouldn't. Yeah.
They've I just think that's the attitude that Battlefield needs to have again, where this is Battlefield. This is one of the premium shooters on the market. We do things the way we want to do them. If you don't like it, go play Call of Duty. That's the mentality they need to have, and stick to their guns on what has made the franchise strong in the past, because that's what they used to do. They never used to care about any other game, and look how those games turned out.
Yeah. Exactly. I think they've lost that innovation aspect of things of, let's make a game that is going to push forward the Battlefield franchise as a way to push forward the Battlefield franchise, not compete with any of these other games. We want to make a great game, and hey, we'd like it to have a live service. But that's because we found out a great way to implement a live service in the Battlefield formula. Not because, all the other games are doing it, so we should do it too.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was saying earlier. It's fine for them to take a little bit of inspiration. I think every single dev company out there does. Look at Fallen Order. They took a lot from Dark Souls and stuff like that.
It's 7 games Frankenstein together.
Yeah. So,
a beautiful way.
And that's the thing. They took inspiration, but they did it their own way. They didn't just copy-paste stuff in there. And it worked really well. And that's the type of thing that if they're going to look at other games, which it's fine, it's not like they have to just completely detach themselves from gaming, because then that will go the other way. If they're not following some sort of trend, then they're just going to go off a cliff. But you can look at inspiration from other companies and still go, okay, that's what they're doing and that works for them. What's a completely different way of doing kind of the same thing that we can do? And that's how that type of thing evolves. It's not from just straight copying, because it doesn't push the limits anymore. It's just the exact same thing, and it just clearly didn't work in this game.
But hopefully they actually do take it into consideration. They are learning these valuable lessons, and they are taking them to heart instead of being like, yo, Call of Duty, let's just do this. They're not going to be there. Let's force all of our developers to crunch and put out a game experience, because we've never done that before and it worked out poorly.
Yeah, again, we don't know if any of this is true, but it would not surprise me. I think that would be more of an EA thing than DICE. I don't think DICE would be pushing for that. I think EA would be the one saying, no, we've got to pounce.
Yeah.
I just don't know how they don't see that. I guess because it works for them. FIFA and those games, they're out every year. They just pump them out. So I guess in other franchises it does work. It just doesn't work in this game. It's not the same type of game. And they need to understand that. Not all games follow the same formula. And they need to kind of understand. It's a completely
different audience, too.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. From my experience, the people that play sports games are a much more casual audience that are they're going to play it on the weekends, and then they're not really going to care about it. They're going to play that game until the next one comes out, and then they're going to buy the next one. They don't care what's in it. They may complain about the different teams and the stats and whatever, but ultimately they're just going to be like, okay, if I don't I'll play this with my buddies, and then when the next one comes out, I'll play it with them. But like Call of Duty, Battlefield, first-person shooter players have so many different options that it's like, I'm going to play the game I want to play and the one that I enjoy, not just because this is the only soccer game that there is.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing with the sports games. Like, a large part of it is just because the people who buy those games like those sports, and they just want to. It's almost like you want to simulate the sport yourself. You want to be on the field yourself. So I don't think anyone really cares about the gameplay, because it's just a bit of fun. Those games aren't. There's certain elements and certain modes that are a bit more serious, but I'd say 90% of people that buy FIFA, they're buying it just to play as their favorite team and do a season and try and win. That's what sports fans want, and that's why they buy those games. Yep. So it's not the same with shooters. There is definitely still the casual player base, but it's just not. I'm not buying Battlefield to try and simulate a real war. Like, I don't want, it's not the same thing as sport. So yeah, they just need to. I think they don't understand that, and they really need to, I think.
I don't know why, but I find that so funny. I really wanted to be in the war, but since I can't, I'm playing Battlefield. Yeah. But I think that's a good place to end the episode. Really, really interesting discussion. I think next episode I really want to touch on the ideas of the communication. You had a fantastic video that you released, I believe today, on the communication, what's been happening there. Really enjoyed that. The video that you did today is just like an impromptu, like, hey, this is a breakdown of what's really going on. So I really want to dive deeper into that. But thank you all so much for listening to this episode of The Battlefield Show. We'd greatly appreciate your support. Subscribe, like, share, do all the things. Let us know your thoughts as well. What would you like to see in Battlefield? What do you think of the decisions that we're hearing rumblings about? Let us know in the comments or contact at uplinkpodcast.com. As always, we'd like to thank Ethan Clark for the beautiful thumbnail, you for listening, and we'll see you on the battlefield.